Bandicoot, the wrath of Cortex.
Hi, I'm Andy Liu.
And I'm Jasmine Dong.
We're gonna do a Let's Play analysis of Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex for IAT210. Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex is a single-player action platforming game developed by Travel Tales and published by Universal Interactive. It was released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2 and a year after for the Xbox and GameCube. The business model of the publishers is to sell the entire game upfront to the consumers. Wrath of Cortex is the fourth installment in the main series of Crash Bandicoot games, and the sixth in the entire franchise. A brief history of Wrath of Cortex is that it is the follow-up successor to the smash hit Crash Bandicoot Warped. Warped has sold 3 million copies in just 4 months, 7 million total to this date, and is the 13th best-selling PlayStation 1 game of all time. So Wrath of Cortex had a lot to live up to. Wrath of Cortex is the first of the franchise to be released as a non-Sony exclusive. Despite being released to more platforms, the game only managed to sell 2.7 million units total, which is a lot less than what its predecessor made in 4 months. Also, the game did not add any new innovation from its previous title, which caused backlash among the fans and is considered a failed successor in the franchise. But this remains controversial as some fans argue otherwise. In Wrath of Cortex, the game takes place after the events of the previous installment. The villains of the franchise are holding a convention to formulate a plan to defeat Crash Bandicoot. Dr. Cortex, who is the main antagonist of our game, says that he has a weapon that can defeat Crash. However, they need to acquire a power source that is only available on Earth. To obtain the power, they need to harness the destructive powers of the renegade elemental masks that are located on Earth. There are 4 masks, each controlling a specific element which is either Earth, Water, Fire, or Air. Because of the havoc and destruction they caused on Earth, the ancients used a special crystal that put the masks in a state of hibernation. Thus, our villains conclude that in order to power the weapon, they must awaken the masks. Aku Aku, who is Crash's guide, notices an increase in disasters on Earth and new trouble was brewing. So he requests assistance from Crash and his sister Coco Bandicoot to help stop Cortex and his plan. Aku Aku informs our heroes that the only way to defeat the elements is to gather the crystals and imprison them once again. So our journey begins. As the player takes on the role of being Crash and Coco, the player must traverse through the levels, eliminating enemies, navigating the obstacles, controlling various vehicles, collecting crystals, and defeating the elemental boss, all with the ultimate goal in mind of stopping Dr. Cortex. Although the game is more focused on the gameplay aspect rather than providing a rich story, the player will still experience a story that is provided through cutscenes in between every level, hence providing the player an embedded narrative. The game's narrative is also linearly structured, meaning the player must complete the current world before advancing further into the game and the story. However, due to the linearity and the lack of choices, it provides an absence of player agency.
The objective of the game is for players to defeat Dr. Cortex by collecting all 25 crystals. Each crystal is associated with a level and players can only advance by obtaining it. Each level has various environmental settings that has an overall effect on how players will defeat it. Players are commonly on foot, but occasionally there will be a different method of transportation that will act as an additional challenge. An example is shown here. The actions and movements performed in the game is controlled by the player. An implicit rule here is that the players should know how to use the controller for the game. Operative actions vary between 2 characters, Crash and Coco Bandicoot. Crash's operative actions include jumping, running, spinning, sliding, ducking, and crawling. These operative actions aid players when going through the rounds. Resultant actions can also benefit players. An example would be when you press jump and crawl at the same time and you can body slam objects in the game. Coco Bandicoot's operative actions, on the other hand, include kicking, dashing, and stomping. The other rules in this game are relatively simple. The operation rules that apply to the 3-dimensional space game is continuous, and players basically have to try to avoid dying in general. The written rules are stated in the game for the player to obtain a basic understanding of how the game works. This game contains objects that has various attributes. Examples of these are Aku Aku crates, apples, the purple gem, TNT crates, iron crates, and nitro crates. Most of these have static attributes, where the attributes of apples in most of the crates do not change. An example of an object that has dynamic attributes is the Aku Aku crate. If 3 Aku Aku masks are collected, the player becomes invincible for a certain period of time and can defeat any obstacle that comes their way. All these various objects combined is what draws people into the magic circle. Different players can be drawn into the magic circle also because of how the game escalates. Wrath of Cortex starts off pretty easy, but as players progress through the game, the complexity increases as they unlock new challenges for them to face. Obstacles will appear in some of the levels that were not present initially. However, possession of new objects will also take place as players unlock levels. An example would be when the second world is complete, players will be rewarded with the ability to do a double jump, which will benefit them in the future. Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex is considered as a hardcore game because players are going through a continuous journey which requires them to dedicate a lot of time into playing it. Crash Bandicoot does have a presence of a gaming community. On YouTube, there are quite a bit of videos of consumers playing and making mods as well as speedruns. This displays a participatory culture. Crash Bandicoot even has a subreddit dedicated to it as a whole, and it is on Wikia and Neoseeker. This shows that there are still active players in the community today. The type of aesthetic that a player will experience will oftentimes be a challenge. This game does increase in difficulty as you progress, so it may not seem like much of a challenge at first, until you advance into the other worlds or when you battle the villains. There are obstacles that players are constantly faced with as well. Lindsay Grace discussed about the genre of games that are based on the gamer motivation model. Wrath of Cortex fits under the mastery and achievement category of this model, where it requires those who like how the game is challenging and relies on skill and ability. To complete the game, individuals need to be skillful enough with the controls to be successful. Players who are ambitious about finishing things they start would also enjoy this game because there's a story associated with it as well. The only way to complete the story is by defeating the overall game. The types of players that would fit into the description of Bartol's taxonomy are those who are achievers. These people prefer to go up levels to succeed in the game, where in this case is necessary because that is the only way players can defeat it. Based on this, an ideal persona for this game would be teenagers who enjoy playing platform games in their spare time. Crash Bandicoot contains many levels which require time dedication. A good storyline is also not important for the teenager because they play the game to feel the action. These players can feel the action and excitement by destroying objects and experiencing the different elements Wrath of Cortex has to offer. The ideal target audience of Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex is generally for anyone who has an interest of what the game has to offer, though I believe that it is better suited for younger audiences because there are no gruesome images such as blood splatter or violence. The graphics of the game is also quite cartoon-like. This concludes our Let's Play analysis of Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex. Thank you for listening.
Curse you, Bandicoot!